Some towns sprinted into the future, others politely refused. And then there are the ones on this list, where it feels like the 1960s just lit a cigarette, kicked its feet up, and said, "Yeah, I'm staying." These places still run on soda fountains, handwritten signs, slow afternoons, and the kind of charm that doesn't need Wi-Fi to function. So today, we're counting down 10 American towns where the 60s never ended, starting with the one that feels the most magically frozen of them all. Grab a milkshake and your favorite vinyl record. This trip's going full retro. Before we begin, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next time travel tour. Number 10, Mackinac Island, Michigan. Mackinac Island is the closest thing America has to a functioning time machine, except it smells like fudge and horses instead of burnt electricity. The moment you step off the ferry, your brain short circuits. No engines, no cars, no honking, just hooves, bells, and people pedaling like they're training for the Tour de Nostalgia. Cars were banned in 1898, and the island never changed its mind. Kind of like that one grandparent who refuses to switch from flip phone to smartphone because the buttons feel right. With a permanent population of around 600 to 660, Mackinac somehow hosts over 1 million tourists every year, all shuffling between candy shops, Victorian inns, and porches big enough to host a congressional hearing. Home prices? Try over $830,000 on average, which is hilarious because you're basically paying luxury city money to live in the world's most charming horse farm. But the island's beauty sneaks up on you. Wooden cottages with candy-colored trim, water so blue it looks edited, streets so quiet you can hear your own thoughts judging you. Even the Grand Hotel, the one with the world's longest porch, still serves afternoon tea like the Kennedys might walk in any minute. And here's the thing. Mackinac doesn't pretend to be retro, it just is. The fudge shops use old recipes, the carriages follow routes older than most states' highway systems, and the sunsets look straight out of a 1962 tourism poster. Could you live here? Maybe, as long as you're cool with your Uber being a horse named Stanley, who absolutely does not care about your personal schedule. Number 9, Cooperstown, New York. Cooperstown feels like someone took a Norman Rockwell painting, shook off the museum dust, and said, "All right, everybody, back to work." Everything here leans warm, wooden, and wonderfully stubborn about the past. The population sits under 2,000, yet the town pulls in over 260,000 visitors a year, all chasing the baseball-soaked nostalgia the place practically sweats out of its bricks. Walk down Main Street and you'll pass diners with red vinyl booths, ice cream counters scooping like it's 1959, and the kind of shopkeepers who greet you like they already know your childhood nickname. The National Baseball Hall of Fame sits right in the middle of it all, like a shrine built for anyone who dreams in box scores and stadium lights. Median home price? Around $375,000, which is wild when you realize this town is basically 80% history, 20% lakeside dreamscape. Even the buildings feel like they've sworn a secret oath to stay exactly as they were when Mickey Mantle was still terrorizing pitchers. Cooperstown's historic district is enormous, strict, and aggressively photogenic. But here's the fun part. While everything looks charmingly vintage, the rhythm of life hits different. People sit on benches like they're waiting for a barbershop quartet to start singing. Teenagers hang out by the lake instead of doom scrolling. And the pharmacy still sells soda by the cup, hand-mixed, bubbly, and threatening to ruin every store-brand cola you've tolerated since. Cooperstown is cozy, a little corny, totally sincere, and weirdly addictive. By the time you're leaving, you'll swear the town gave you a baseball card tan line. Number 8, Shipshewana, Indiana. Shipshewana is the kind of place that makes your GPS start sweating because it knows you're entering horse and buggy territory. The town itself has fewer than 1,000 people, but it sits at the heart of an Amish community nearly 30,000 strong, making it one of the largest Amish regions in America, and easily one of the most visually stunning. Picture this: a two-lane country road, morning fog rising like a movie intro, and a buggy rolling past with the clop-clop rhythm of a metronome set to peaceful. Here, the 1960s didn't just stick around, they brought homemade pies. The flea market is gigantic, the auctions are loud, and the craftsmanship is so precise you start questioning every IKEA purchase you've ever made. The median home value is around $255,000, which is pretty reasonable for a town where the biggest traffic jam you'll face is waiting for a herd of buggies to clear an intersection. And the funniest thing? Tourists arrive with cameras ready, but after a few hours, everyone starts slowing down to the local pace. You buy jam, you buy a quilt, you consider learning how to churn butter. It happens. Shops sell goods made by hand. Not handmade like your Etsy seller who drop-shipped it from somewhere questionable, actually handcrafted. Food tastes like someone cooked it with love, butter, and generational confidence. Even the sidewalks feel calmer. Shipshewana isn't a theme park. It's a living, breathing community where the modern world isn't banned. It just politely waits outside. And honestly, it's refreshing. If peace had a zip code, this place would own the trademark. Number 7. Eureka Springs, Arkansas. Eureka Springs is what happens when a Victorian postcard and a 1960s flower child fall in love and forget to move out of the mountains. This town doesn't look frozen in time. It looks hand-carved, painted, and then lovingly dusted with incense. The whole place sits on steep, winding Ozark hills, which means every walk feels like a workout, but with prettier scenery. You've got stone cottages stacked like the universe's most wholesome Jenga tower, neon shop signs that haven't changed since the Beatles were still arguing about haircuts, and trolley cars that clatter through town like they're practicing for a retro film festival. Population? About 2,100 people, which isn't a town. It's a cozy group chat with plumbing. Houses hold their Victorian bones proudly, with the median home sitting around $245,000, making it shockingly affordable for a place that feels this cinematic. But the real magic is the energy. Eureka Springs has this artsy, free-spirited heartbeat. Galleries spill out onto sidewalks. Street musicians play like the air itself asked for a soundtrack. And the entire town has a sort of no stress allowed aura, probably because half the residents arrived during the 1970s and never emotionally unpacked. Even the ghosts here probably wear tie-dye. But don't mistake the whimsy for chaos. The historic district is protected with a passion, meaning buildings stay charming, quirky, and maybe a little uneven, but never bulldozed. And then there's the food. Diners that feel straight out of 1965. Cafes where the coffee tastes like someone brewed it on purpose, and pie that absolutely does not respect personal boundaries. Eureka Springs is weird, wonderful, and wildly photogenic. It's the kind of place where you can walk into a shop for a candle and accidentally join a crystal workshop. Don't ask how, it just happens. Number 6. Port Townsend, Washington. Port Townsend is a Victorian seaport that somehow convinced the 1960s to stick around and help with the rent. It sits at the tip of the Olympic Peninsula like an old storyteller perched on a dock, ready to spin a tale. When the fog rolls in across the harbor, the whole town looks like a movie scene scored by vinyl crackle and soft jazz. With around 10,000 people, Port Townsend has just enough residents to feel lively, but not enough to spoil the charm. And with median home prices floating above $500,000, you're paying for both the waterfront views and the privilege of pretending you're living inside a sepia photograph. The downtown is almost too picturesque. Victorian brickwork you want to hug, independent bookstores that smell like oak and old paperbacks, and maritime shops that sell things you didn't know you needed, like polished brass compasses or boat soap. The Rose Theater marquee glows at night like a beacon for anyone who misses the days when going to the movies was an event, not a negotiation with streaming services. But my favorite part? The boats. Wooden boats. Everywhere. Port Townsend worships wooden boats the way some towns worship football. There's a festival, workshops, and probably a support group for people emotionally attached to their hull sanding techniques. And yet, for all its old-school charm, the town never feels staged. It's lived in, real, a little salty, a bit artsy, and very proud of its edges. You sit on a bench, watch the ferries drift by, sip coffee from a mug that weighs 12 pounds, and suddenly the world slows down. Like Port Townsend whispered, "Relax, this is the pace now." Number 5. Galena, Illinois. Galena looks like a Hallmark movie set that someone accidentally left on permanent mode. Seriously, over 85% of the town is a designated historic district, which means the buildings look exactly like they did when people still trusted polyester. You stroll down Main Street and immediately understand why over 1 million tourists swing through every year. The storefronts curve gently along the hillside, brick by brick, like they're posing for a Christmas card 12 months a year. Population? About 3,300. But the town feels bigger because every shopkeeper greets you like you're already on their holiday mailing list. Median home prices hover around $300,000, and honestly, that's a bargain for a place where every window looks like it belongs in a vintage postcard. But Galena isn't just pretty, it's layered. Behind that perfect brick and lace exterior is a living town with restaurants that actually cook, not reheat, and boutiques that sell things you don't need, but absolutely must have simply because the packaging looks nostalgic. You can walk into an old-fashioned candy store, grab a handful of licorice ropes, and swear you've been transported to 1964. Even the air feels retro. There's a sweetness to it. Maybe caramel, maybe wood smoke, maybe just the collective joy of people escaping Chicago for the weekend. And the architecture? Untouched, protected, revered. It's like historical preservation walked in, rolled up its sleeves, and said, "I got this." Galena is warm, welcoming, and dangerously charming. Stay too long and you'll start checking home listings. Stay a little longer and you'll start checking rocking chair prices. Number 4. Jacksonville, Oregon. Jacksonville is the kind of town that makes you whisper, "Was this place legally allowed to stay this adorable?" It feels like someone paused history right around the Kennedy era and said, "We'll pick this up later." Spoiler, they never did. With a population of just over 3,000, Jacksonville is basically a beautifully preserved antique store with restaurants, people, and award-winning wine. The whole town is a National Historic Landmark District, boasting over 100 preserved buildings that look straight out of a Western drama with a mid-century heart. Walk down California Street, and you'll pass old saloons, wooden storefronts, and a pharmacy sign that looks like it refuses to acknowledge the existence of LED lights. The median home value sits around $590,000, which is ironic because the entire place feels like the cost of living should be payable in hugs, pie, and gold nuggets. But people don't come here for budget living. They come for that perfectly aged rustic charm, the kind that seduces you with a window box full of flowers and then blindsides you with views of golden hills at sunset. The Brit Music Festival adds another layer of magic. Picture an outdoor concert under warm summer air, surrounded by towering trees, with music echoing through a hillside orchard. It's the kind of moment that makes you forget your phone exists. But Jacksonville's greatest trick is how natural it all feels. Nothing is overly polished. Nothing screams tourist trap. It breathes, it hums, it feels lived in but untouched, quiet but vibrant. A place where the 1960s didn't just visit, they moved in, unpacked their suitcases, and started gardening. Number 3. Marfa, Texas. Marfa feels like someone took a 1960s desert road trip, left it on a windowsill too long, and it sunbaked itself into perfection. The town has around 1,800 residents, which is basically enough people to fill a high school football game, minus the football. Instead, Marfa offers dusty streets, neon motel lights that still hum like they're warming up for a Beatles reunion, and the endless, "Did James Dean actually walk here?" energy left behind from filming Giant. What makes Marfa surreal is the contrast. You'll see a weathered pickup truck parked in front of a minimalist art gallery where a sculpture costs more than the truck. Median home value? Around $220,000, but the income average sits just above $38,000, giving the whole place an art collector meets cowboy philosopher vibe. And then there's the Prada Marfa installation sitting 37 miles outside town, looking like an art prank that refused to end. You stand there squinting at a boutique in the desert and think, is this real? Yes. Are the bags real? Also yes. Will you buy one? Absolutely not. You'll be too busy taking photos pretending you're in a very stylish apocalypse. Marfa is dusty, dreamy, and strange in the best way. It's the kind of town where time slows down, creativity speeds up, and your phone camera becomes your best friend. Bring sunscreen and opinions. Number 2, Bardstown, Kentucky. Bardstown is what happens when a 1960s courthouse square marries a bourbon barrel and raises a family of old-fashioned charm. With 13,500 residents, it's big enough to feel alive, but small enough that the barber probably knows your government secrets. The buildings around the square glow with brick and white trim warmth, like someone turned Americana into architecture. Median home value? Around $250,000, which is shockingly modest for the capital of a spirit that brings in millions. Walking through Bardstown feels like stepping into a mid-century postcard, church bells, vintage storefronts, and a main street that has the confidence of someone who still irons their shirts. But the bourbon? Oh, the bourbon! Distilleries that predate your entire family tree dot the outskirts. The air itself sometimes smells like vanilla and oak, basically a scented candle, but natural. Bardstown ages whiskey the same way it aged its identity. Slow, patient, and stubbornly beautiful. Even the food leans old school, with diners serving bologna sandwiches thicker than your phone. It's wholesome, warm, and dangerously smooth, just like the drink it's famous for. Number 1, Oxford, Mississippi. Oxford is a college town that somehow refused to grow out of its 1960s phase. The 26,000 residents keep it buzzing, but the heartbeat is the courthouse square, a cluster of bookshops, soda fountains, and glowing neon that looks like the town forgot to update itself and thought, "Hey, this works." Homes run from $330,000 to $400,000, which feels absurd until you stand there at sunset and watch the square light up like a vintage movie set. People spill out of restaurants, students stroll with milkshakes, and you half expect someone to hand you a typewriter and tell you to get to work. Oxford has literary swagger too. Faulkner lived here, and Dylan wrote Oxford Town about it. Walk the paths around Roanoke, and you can practically hear echoes of the 60s drifting between the trees. It's modern, sure, but the soul, pure retro, a place where the past doesn't cling. It lingers, politely, with charm strong enough to make you believe nostalgia might actually be a location. Some towns race forward. These places hold the past like a treasure they refuse to misplace. Whether it's bourbon air, neon glow, or streets that still hum with vinyl energy, each one reminds you that the 60s never really left. They just changed addresses. Tell me which town stole your heart, and hit subscribe before we pack our bags for the next time warp adventure.